this is a topic that's actually pretty near and dear to me. Because initially, when I heard that this company was being formed, those of you who've been here for a few years, you remember how hyped I was. I had hope. I know that's a big mistake. You shouldn't have that in current year. I had some hope. I really did. I was cautiously optimistic. I was willing to give this company a shot. But the more I heard about their projects, the more red flags were thrown up. Like every single time they announced something new, it came with another one or two red flags. Until eventually I noped out. And it looks like I'm not the only one because, let's just say this has been a little bit of a disaster. Frost Giant CEO Tim Morton says layoffs are possible after Stormgate underperforms. Yeah, underperforms is a little bit of an understatement. They weren't even able to break, was it a 1/4 as many concurrent players in their actual release than they had during early access? And the game's free to play. And you had to pay for the early access, if I remember, but you don't have to pay for the full launch. Oh, man. Oh, this is a disaster. The real-time strategy title currently has fewer concurrent players at launch than it did during early access. Yeah, that's putting it lightly. And some people, like, they're going to try to cope. And that's just because real-time strategy games are just not popular anymore. Bullshit. Tempest Rising did great. Yeah, sure. A lot of the projects made by ex-Blizzard devs have been flopping hard, like Stormgate, which we're going to talk about. Battle Aces. I think that Battle Aces was a solid game, but they flopped because they focused 100% on competitive multiplayer. And as I've said a million times before, despite you maybe believing that this is a competitive genre of game, like 90% of people who play these games never do a single competitive multiplayer match. So Tempest Rising had a single player campaign, and they harkened back to the days of Command and Conquer, and they did okay. Fucking Stormgate and Battle Aces, they both went the live service route. Like, I still remember when Frost Giant announced that they were going to make Stormgate a live service. Everyone was trying to tell him, no, dude, that's fucking regarded, man. No, that's fucking regarded. You shouldn't do that. Oh, but we got to adapt to the times, guys. Needs to be a live service, guys. See how well that's working out. If this was a single player game, and they had a massive fall off like in the weeks after launch, it wouldn't be that big of a deal because you fucking expect it. I'll admit, one of the things that triggers me in current year is when a single player game launches and some clueless regard like points at those numbers like, well, look, that game you like completely died. It went from 100,000 concurrent players to just like 600 4 months later. Like, yeah, because it's a fucking single player game, dipshit. If it was a live service, that would be the sign of a dead game. But no, if it's a single player game, you expect there to be a massive drop off. Frost Giant CEO and production editor Tim Morton has warned the indie studio might need a contract to survive after its debut project Stormgate underperformed. Well, that company has been struggling for a while because the only reason they launched the game into early access in the first place was because they ran out of money. So they somehow blew through 1/10 of a Concord worth of money over the course of this game's development. And they needed more. They thought they'd get a lot more than they did with the early access, but it didn't work. And then they thought, oh, okay, let's just cut it off here and say the game is finished. Then we can have basically a second launch. I gave them a little bit of a boost, but not that big. Yeah, too many red flags even for free. Yeah, and plus, if you want to play it for free, you can only do the competitive multiplayer. If you want to play the single player, you have to pay for that. Now, industry veteran Morton, who previously managed the production on the StarCraft franchise at Blizzard before leaving to establish Frost Giant Studios, Yeah, I spoke to the game developer game developer at Gamescom current year and confirmed Stormgate is seriously struggling after exiting early access on Steam. So everything we've been saying for years is finally confirmed, huh? Okay. Yeah, I'm sure the modern audience will show up any minute now. Any second now. That sounds like another Thor type employee. Oh, God. Probably. In a candid conversation by the current state of play, Morton said Stormgate peaked at around 1,000 concurrent players on Steam at launch, which is significantly less than the 5,000 it managed to hit during early access. And now it's like 150. So yeah, it's nowhere near the 1,000 it used to be. We're at 20% of what we saw during early access, and that's not a sustainable place for us to be. So either we find a partner or we have to get smaller, or we have get smaller. Dang. Is that how he actually said it and they quoted him word for word, or is that just ChatGPT messing up? Yeah, ChatGPT needs to learn to transcribe its interviews better. Discussing what that partnership might take shape. Oh, okay. Morton was adamant the foundational elements of Stormgate show clear potential and said the studio could leverage its tools and experience to give partners interested in building RTS games a huge head start. Well, you guys know what this sounds like, right? You know how whenever a Kickstarter MMO flops, which is all but like one of them, what was it like? I think Albion actually was successful, but almost all of them are massive flops. The first thing they try to do to save themselves is, oh yeah, sure, our game might be a total loss, but yeah, we got this great game engine now, so we could just license our game engine out to other Kickstarter scammers who are just going to release the next wave of flops. That's basically what Frost Giant is doing here. Yeah, they're like, well, okay, our game may have failed, but maybe we can license out the engine to somebody. That's what they're doing. There are some big IPs that would make a lot of sense to turn into an RTS. So there are a lot of conversations for us as a studio around that. The second clear of opportunity for us is user-generated content. He explained. Well, this is actually probably the best choice these guys have. Like, this is not a bad idea. It's clear they can't operate on their own. But if they were hired by someone else that has a big popular IP that they could turn into an RTS, might be able to make a little bit of money. Now, RTS is such a rich history of user-generated content, and already the first early release of it, the tool has been a tremendous amount of activity and creativity evident from the community. If you guys don't know how much of an understatement that quote is, user-generated content in RTS games is what gave us MOBAs. That's what birthed Dota and League of Legends and all that crap. Like, Riot Games came about through modding RTS games. How much people care to do that nowadays, though? I think nowadays everyone would much rather mod Skyrim. There are a variety of partners who I think could really help us capitalize and double down on that. But I think it's fair to say the future of Frostbite and the future of Stormgate really depends on us finding a good partner. Otherwise, we have no choice but to contract. And by contract, they mean completely shut down, actually. It's an ominous statement, not least because Frost Giant currently has 48 employees on its books. They've already shrank, huh? One said the scale of those layoffs will depend on how much revenue the studio manages to generate, but confirmed Stormgate isn't delivering a large return at the moment. Let's see if he's able to catch on. Frost Giant's struggling to realize vision for Stormgate after raising almost $40 million. Damn. And then you got like 1 or 2 man indie shows like fucking Undertale or Schedule 1 just making all the fucking money. They somehow were able to do it without spending copious like $40 million. Now, Frost Giant has raised just under $40 million in funding since breaking cover in current year -5. We asked Morton where that investment has been spent. Ferraris? Far and away, the single biggest spend is the cost of the developers who build the game. That dwarfs anything he said. Oh, okay. This makes perfect sense. So most of these guys came from Blizzard, and they were probably paying themselves the same fucking wages they were making as senior employees at Blizzard. So I'm sure they all needed to make $250,000 to $500,000 a year, like bare minimum. So that dwarfs anything he said. I think people like to talk about making a single cutscene or talk about having celebrities in the game, but those costs are nothing compared to the cost of headcount over half a decade period of the game. This is true. He actually has a good point there. Like it might cost $100,000 or so for a celebrity guest appearance, but that's less than the yearly salary of a lot of these devs times 5 years. Yeah, it is a big expense. They're not, the guy's not lying about this. The budget that we raised at $40 million is a tiny fraction of what it would cost to build a new StarCraft inside of Blizzard today. Yeah, Smash JT covered this article, and he actually had a good point. Like, what is it with all of these fucking AAA devs that when they leave their old company, the only thing they know how to do is make like lesser carbon copies of the game they worked on at the big company? Like what's the sell there? Like in Stormgate's case, hey, remember StarCraft 2? Would you like an inferior clone of it? Like, no, I'd rather just play StarCraft 2. Like this literally is just like all the WoW killers back in the day. Like, why would I play your shitty WoW knockoff when I could play the real thing with like a decade of polish on top of it? Just doesn't make any damn sense. And if you're going to do something like this, you at least have to differentiate yourself from your previous game. Because yes, in this case, like Stormgate really is just inferior StarCraft 2 in every fucking way. There's nothing about that game that differentiates itself from StarCraft 2. It's just lesser StarCraft 2. And you could play StarCraft 2 for free. So why would you get Stormgate? Yeah, really, like they did not think this through. I guess though their only thought process was, well, let's just make the one thing we're good at. Let's just make the one thing we know how to make. Now, I don't know the numbers that would cost to build Age of Empires recently or any other big publisher release, but I'm very confident that it's higher than what we've spent on Stormgate. I wonder how much Tempest Rising cost. I think people hear a number like 40 million and think, wow, that's so much money. But the truth is, to build games of this scope and this quality requires more money. That's right. You needed Concord levels of money. Then the flop would have been better, right? Morton confirmed Frost Giant stuck to budget on Stormgate, but says he would have liked to raise additional funds because his vision for the project was and indeed remains so large. He believes that in a world where Frost Giant had been able to raise capital against its vision, a different outcome would have been likely, but acknowledged that in the current climate, indie developers must keep a tight focus. Now, do you guys consider a $40 million studio to be indie? Because I sure as fuck don't. Like, dude, this is on the upper end of AA. Like, I would even say the low side of AAA right here. A $40 million budget is not indie. What the fuck are you guys smoking? You call yourselves indie when you're spending $40 million? No, an indie is like the guy that made Schedule 1. Like one guy in their fucking garage. Oh, or even better, the guy that made that Grow a Garden game that's apparently the highest concurrent player count game of all time, and it's a fucking mini game on Roblox. Apparently some fucking 16-year-old kid wrote that in 3 days. Nah, that is a fucking indie right there. Not your fucking $40 million StarCraft 2 imitation. Holy shit. I think at this point they're trying to label themselves indie because they think it'll give them more sympathy from the public. We had to face constricting capital, he continued. We had to face fragmentation and player attention and unheard of numbers of games being launched on Steam year on year. You had every advantage, though. You guys were a well-known team. Everyone knew about your studio. At least your target audience did. The people that are into real-time strategy games. You had the attention of the entire real-time strategy community. You were able to get up to almost 5,000 concurrent players in early access, which all disappeared pretty much overnight. So if your game was good, they would have stuck around. They would have like word of mouth would have spread for you. You can't blame your failure on some random like shovelware game that took a weekend to make from nothing but Unreal assets that got shat out on Unreal on the same day as your game. Man, this guy clearly is not cut out to be an indie dev. He has to exist in a big corporate environment. That is the only way he can make any money. We're in a place now where really excellent game like Wildgate from Dreamhaven and Supervive from Theorycraft, which are getting high review scores and delivering fantastic gameplay to players, and not achieving a scale that I would expect. To be fair, a lot of players are just burnt the fuck out on anything that looks like the legacy game industry. I keep telling, look, how many years have I been telling you that all the kids are on Roblox? Yeah, Bellular put out a video earlier where he basically confirmed everything I've been saying. That's something like 90, like over 90% of Gen Alpha only games on mobile. And the only thing they play is Roblox. Like they don't actually play anything else. See, some people are freaking out about that. I think that's a good thing. I think this is great because it's going to make the stuff we like go back underground again. We're going to be indie again, which means our space is going to be full of people that are just doing it because they know they're making games like they used to, by fans for fans. So this will be the death of AAA. But when was the last time AAA released anything you cared about anyway? Like, is it really going to matter if AAA dies? Well, fuck, I mean, we saw with strategy games, Tempest Rising was fucking great. That game did, I'm quite sure that game was profitable. It obviously wasn't fucking Roblox profitable, but it was still profitable. More than enough money for the team that made it. Now, Morin claims there are still opportunities for indie developers, but they might need to look towards new frontiers in order to make ends meet. Yeah, so basically what you guys didn't do over at Frost Giant when you cloned the best game in the genre and made a lesser version of it. There are still opportunities for indies. They're just different opportunities. What I see in the market today is very small teams with very low cost who will focus on tight vision and differentiation, and they can still succeed, he added. Yeah, like imagine a game that actually focuses on something you don't get anymore. Fan service. How about that? The next Senran Kagura. Not going to be selling tens of millions of copies, but if you keep the budgets under control, it's very easy to profit off of a game like that. I think user-generated content is exploding, particularly Roblox, but also UEFN and platforms like CurseForge and Mod.io. I think there are still some exciting opportunities there. Then I think companies that have evergreen franchises and therefore a stable base of revenue continue to try to innovate. Innovate Farm? Oh, Innovate Farm will continue to make exciting games. Yeah, once again, ChatGPT was, it didn't transcribe its interview with this guy very well. But to me, those are clear opportunities. And there's this AI wildcard that all of us are trying to figure out. Yeah, AI is what's going to be the final nail in the coffin of studios like yours. AI is what's going to allow like 3 friends in their garage to make a game at the same level you guys did. So yeah, AI is going to be a game changer, but for giant bloated companies like yours, yeah, that change is not going to be something you're going to appreciate. We'll have more from Morton on the rather divisive subject at a later date. Yeah, I don't really care how divisive these subjects are. Like you can't argue with the truth. You can't argue with reality. So yeah, that's what happens with AI. Now you can speculate And you can argue about whose speculations may be more correct than others, but you can't argue with the actual provable effects. Yeah, 25 years ago, developers wanted to make the best game ever. Now they want to make the most profitable game ever. 100% fact. And this applies to the employees working there too. Don't forget that. Because all the good developers that wanted to make the best game ever, they don't work in AAA anymore. Those are the developers like Sandfall. All the good ones already left. They're big AAA corpo overlords and are working on their own stuff now. Like that's what they're gonna need to do to prove themselves. Because fuck, man, I wouldn't trust anyone who's got that AAA taint on them, unless they do what Sandfall did and make their own indie studio and actually release something good. Yeah, gacha games will pave the way. That's right. That's where all the good stuff is now. And look, unironically, if you are one of those people who plays games primarily for the story, like you grew up on single player RPGs and like you weren't even that big on the gameplay, you just liked the story. Gacha games, they got you covered because most of them update every 2 to 3 weeks. You got a few like Snowbreak, like they go like 40 days between major story updates. But like Girls Frontline 2 is updating like every 3 weeks. Nikkei updates on average every like you usually don't go more than 2 weeks without new story content in that game. So if you only care about the story, then play something like Nikkei. Like its story is way better than almost any single player game out there. And you get new story like every 2 weeks. It's not like most single player games where you play it once and you're done. No, man, the story's ongoing. It's gonna by the time all is said and done, if all goes well, there'll probably be hundreds of hours. Yeah, but it has that icky fan service. Yeah, it's called a built-in filter. It's great. It keeps all the fucking tourists out. Well, not all of them, unfortunately. The community has to gatekeep on their own because the tourists have been trying to fucking ruin Nikkei as well. But thankfully, they're fighting back, just like I mean, we'll have yet to see if they're as successful as the Blue Archive community was. But I think the problem is Shift Up is actively trying to court the fucking normies.